need to speak with Strata about that.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Lisa Zephyr and I'm a school counselor at Amherst Regional High School. I've been working at the high school since 2002. I am also the parent of 3 teenagers in the district, so I am fully experiencing the local impact of COVID, both through my professional world as well as at my home with 3 teenagers. I'd like to introduce Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Belzano. I'm a school counselor. I've been at the school since 2005. I am a parent, not in Amherst, but I have a graduating senior and a 7th grader. So for any of you, especially those of you who have seniors, I very much can appreciate and am sharing all of that same experience you are.
Karen?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Karen Peters. I'm a clinician at the high school, and I also run the Bright Transition Program.
And Principal Talib?
Yeah, I'm Talib Sadiq, interim principal here at the high school. And I have 2 children in the high school as well, one in 9th grade and one in 11th grade. So similar to our counselors. Here for support, answer a few questions at the end, but they're definitely going to be running the show mainly.
Great, thank you. So we're really glad to have this opportunity to connect with parents and guardians. We see you as truly essential partners in our work to support your children during their time in high school. The discussion topic for tonight is on how COVID-19 has impacted the social emotional well-being of our teens. The flow of the evening will be in 4 parts. First, we're going to talk about some themes that we have seen in our teenagers at the high school. Then we will talk about some school-based and community supports, then moving into tips for families, and then move into questions. So we do really look forward to the Q&A portion of the evening. This said, please note that we're not in the position right now to answer a lot of questions related to the specific plans for the return to school, because these details are still being worked out through members of our faculty and admin team. So Sherry's going to start and talk to you all about some of the themes that we're seeing in our students with regards to social emotional health.
So the very first theme that we've seen, and I'm just going to say this because I hear it at my own house every day, is I'm over it, right? I think we're all over it. It's been, on March 13th of last year, we thought that this was a 2-week process and we're now at week 54, right? So understandably, everyone is over it. But for everyone to know, families are adapting, they're learning, we're evolving, and it's really hard work, right? One theme is that, at least for myself and the other counselors when we talk and families we've talked to, is this is hard work. It's hard work. We have seen a huge range of experiences among our students, similar to what we see in person, right? We see a wide variety of experiences in person. Some students are struggling, others are thriving. Some students are just moving along at a consistent pace, kind of going their way. We have students who have struggled in person in the past who are finding that a remote setting is working really great for them for a variety of reasons. Social anxiety and pressure can be reduced. They have attentional distractions gone. The block schedule, lesser classes in their day, the time, right? Having a break in the day. One student said to me that hour break in the day is like my dream, Miss Belzano. And on the other side, we have some students who may have excelled in the building who are having opposite effects, right? Who are really feeling that loss of social interaction and their structured day and all of those things. Other themes we're seeing, students are excited about the spring and warm weather. I think all the staff are excited about the spring or warm weather. I know every Friday, right? I'm like, yeah, it's nice out. We are seeing a major fatigue from remote learning, but I want to caveat that this is a time of year that we see fatigue anyway. And remember that March is the longest month of the year in any school because it's the year that typically, this is a month that doesn't really have a break or any sort of long weekend or anything in it. Right now we're seeing some increased anxiety about coming back to school. What is the social piece going to be like? My energy level, like what is the routine going to be like? How am I going to wear? How many masks am I going to wear? Where is the 6 feet? All of those questions. We're seeing Something that's fairly typical in a normal year, but is a little more prevalent right now because social media is their major way of connecting. We are seeing increase in peer conflict with social media. And the most thing that we're seeing that is really unique to right now is we're seeing a worry about increase in standardized tests, right? We're seeing students concerned about MCAS, the access testing, the AP tests that are coming up, the SATs, the ACTs. Do I need to take them? Don't I need to take them? I didn't get to take the PSATs. What does this mean for my future? So those are all some of the themes that we're seeing and many are common in a typical school year. They're just a little bit changed this year. Now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to talk about some of the supports that we have available in the building.
Thank you. Yeah, so I want to start with, how do we learn that students are struggling, right? How do we identify these kids? So one way is that students who are struggling reach out directly to their school counselor. They express self-concerns or concerns about their peers. But we also look at a lot of data. So we'll look at attendance data because that's a big indicator that students are struggling if they have a high number of absences or a high number of tardies. We see that as a big red flag. We also look at grades. So if a student is really struggling academically, that's also a big red flag. However, we know that that's not always the full story because we could have students with straight A grades who are still struggling greatly. So fortunately, we have other ways to find out more about our students who might be having a really difficult social emotional time. So at the start of the year, as part of our staff mandated training sessions, we let staff know when and how to reach out to the counseling team. We created both a Google form for more general social emotional concerns that they might have about a student, and also an emergency urgent form if they think a student is in an acute situation, highly urgent, needs immediate attention. Our biggest message to staff in that training is when in doubt or if anything is cause for pause or discomfort, to report it and to report it as soon as possible. Teachers and paraeducators have been instrumental in forwarding any concerns. For example, if a student is not regularly responding when called on in class, there's some worry, like, is that student there? Are they okay? That's a situation where they would reach out to the counselor if a student is missing a lot of work. Oftentimes from English teachers or social studies teachers, we will hear information based on what a student wrote in a paper, whether the assignment was for fictional or not piece of writing. If a student expressed a lot of panic, anxiety, being overwhelmed, fears or concerns of violence, really low mood, eating irregularities, concerns about their friends, the teachers are great at bringing forth those papers, and they'll tell the student, I'm really sorry, but I couldn't keep your paper confidential. There was cause for concern. You're an incredible writer, and I shared it with your counselor so that we can read it and then follow up, of course. There's also a system in place where if a student looks up a certain word or phrases in the Chromebook, it's flagged by the IT department, and the school counselor is notified, and then the school counselor follows up with students and families as well. An example of what a student might look up that would get flagged is if they looked up signs of depression, or how do I know if I have depression? Those searches are flagged. And we know about it. And sometimes we'll reach out to students and they'll say, oh, I was just doing a health project, and we'll check in with the health teacher, and indeed that was the case. And other times they were just really curious if they were, falling into a really difficult time. And I want to note that parents and guardians are also a huge help when they're able to reach out to us. We really see ourselves as a team with families. We know that you're the experts on your children. So when you reach out to us, it's really important and extremely helpful. So what do we do when we find out that there is a level of concern? We have a range of interventions possible for students. Caseload counselors are often the first point of contact. If we hear of a concern, we reach out to the students as soon as possible. During virtual learning, we do have ways that we can communicate with teachers and pull a student from a class if the concern can't wait until the end of the school day or after. So we can check in with them right away to learn more about what's going on for them. With any high level of concern, we always follow up with the families. Once we have a better idea of the mental health concern, we determine next steps that we can offer. If academic is the main stressor for students, we will often reach out to the teachers that the student has. We might have meetings with students and teachers, possibly offering short-term accommodations while the student is really managing their difficult times and trying to get some additional supports so that they can ease some of their mental health stressors. We can also connect students with free tutors. We have a nice collaboration with UMass Fraternity. I've been in close contact with the person overseeing the fraternity who is offering one-to-one support for our students, our district students. If that's something that you feel like your student needs, definitely reach out to the caseload counselor. We can help get you connected with that. There was information about that free tutoring also in the newsletter sent out by the superintendent at the beginning of the year and then once about 2 weeks ago. We also made student might need some adjustments to their schedule to reduce some workload. They might just need, in the meeting with teachers, figuring out how to break down assignments into manageable chunks. And I will note, teachers have been incredibly supportive and accommodating this year. They are very in tune to the fact that these students have gone through a lot and it's been a long road for them. So they definitely want to help for certain. And so depending on the depth and type of mental health concern, we also have the opportunity to offer some short-term counseling in school with a clinician or a social work intern. We held some short-term stress reduction groups virtually. And if families are feeling and the team working to support the student feels like outside resources are needed, such as a therapist, we have a list of local therapists. I acknowledge that there's a lot of wait lists right now. Sometimes we have a better pulse on who has space in their schedule to take new students. So again, please reach out to us. We also may recommend students talk to their primary care physician. I know a lot of practices during COVID have hired a clinician to work with their practice. So that's another way to access counseling. When students are in extreme emergency mental health situations, we might recommend them for an urgent evaluation through clinical and support options. And that's a way, if you have strong concern about your child and you feel like they have an urgent need right now that needs to be addressed, it's a free support program. They can do a full evaluation. The main headquarters in Florence, I don't know the extent that they're doing virtual versus in person, but the counselor at the high school could certainly guide you through that. If a student needs time away from school prior to returning, we could have a re-entry meeting for them and help ease back into school if they needed to take some time away. I know I've said this already, but if you have any questions or concerns about your child's emotional well-being, we strongly encourage you to reach out to us because we do really want to help and support. I'm going to turn it over to our clinician, Karen Peters, to talk about some tips and strategies for families.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. So before I get started, I want to share a few things. I do want to share a few things that may be some reminders, maybe some different ways to think about things. But the first thing I want to ask everybody to do is to just take a minute and think for a second about a moment or an experience over the past week that you would describe as a parenting win. It might be a little moment, it might be a big moment. And I just want you to sort of think about that for a second. Remember what it felt like. Remember the situation. And just sort of keep that close to you. And now I want you to think for a minute about one of your children. If you have more than one child at the high school, but think about a moment that you can think about that was a kid win. What is something that you noticed or observed in your child that you really felt it was something they could be proud of, or that you noticed and were proud of? And just take a second and remember what that felt like to feel. And keep that close to you as we talk, as we continue. And I wanted to highlight those or make a moment for us to remember some of those positive things, because I think that we're all here most likely because we want to keep doing the best we can. We're worried. We love our children. We want to do everything we can as parents and as family members to support their health and wellness and education. And so we can often forget, I know I can as a parent, often forget the things that I feel like I'm doing pretty well. And so taking a minute to do those things can be really helpful. So as I said, I don't think I'm going to share anything that you haven't heard before. I'm going to share some of the things that I have found the most useful, that families I work with have found the most useful, from experts, from literature, and from other parents who might even be watching and listening right now that I've learned from. And so it's just a few things, and then I'm hoping that's going to spark a dialogue, because we're here to answer some questions and support you through this piece. So as Ms. Balzano said, you're not alone, right? We know that all families are adjusting. We're navigating the waters. We feel like we finally have a sense of what we can count on, and then something shifts. And I think that all of the opportunities to remember the things that we're doing well help us navigate those shifting waters. And during this time, it's not just your teen that needs to survive, right? It's you. And we know developmentally, this is the time when they should be out there. They should be connecting and socializing and figuring out what they like about themselves and what they're struggling with. And they're home with you right now, which is even more challenging to do those things from and with. So here's a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight. So the first one is sort of what I think are pretty key ingredients that we're probably all doing, but I think, again, it's important to just highlight that part of our role as parent, it can often feel like opposites, right? But that it's that piece of being responsive and also setting important boundaries and limits. So being warm, being open, being empathic, and being demanding, setting limits, setting boundaries, and being clear about the things that are not negotiable for their safety and for their development. So what does that look like? It means that when you say no to a teenager, right, that's fun. That's always fun. What it means is when you say no to them, have a dialogue about it. Explain why we're saying no, why this is something that is not an option for you right now or for us as a family. Encourage problem-solving conversations with your student. Help them help you come up with what we might call a plan B. It might not be perfect. It might not be exactly what they want, but they can be a part of sort of understanding why the limit is there, and also helping to adjust and flex to that limit. So keeping both sides of those roles in check, I think, is a really important thing to keep in mind. And along those lines, keeping lines of communication open, asking open-ended questions. I think a lot of families that I've talked to over the years, and particularly this year, talk a lot about how sometimes I don't even want to get into it. I asked the question, they didn't respond, we're going to move on. When you notice that it's something you don't want to talk about, use that as an opportunity to lean in and ask some more open-ended questions. And if your child is someone with big feelings and big reactions that may be hard to manage or hard to sit with for them or for you, those open-ended questions and that opportunity to have that dialogue can oftentimes help them feel those feelings, communicate those feelings, and understand what those are about. Model for your students what you want to see. So when you need a break, when you need to communicate about something, when you need to ask for help, model the things that you want to see. I had a parent the other day say, I try really hard not to ask my teen things that I wouldn't ask of myself. And I thought that was really a lovely way to think about it, that the expectations that we have for them are things that we want to model for them as well. Another thing that I think can be really, as parents, we want things to be easy. We want things to be possible. And it's painful to see our kids hurt or struggling. And I think that one of the things that can be really easy to do is to say something like, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. It's not a big deal. And what we do when we say things like that is we inadvertently may minimize what somebody has some really big feelings and thoughts and experiences about, which is the opposite of what I know that we all want to do. We all want to hear more. We want to understand more, and we want to make it better. And so rather than saying, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine, this isn't a big deal, asking more questions, lean in. This seems really hard for you. Tell me a little bit more about that. I want to understand that better. Whoa, I had no idea that this was such a big deal for you. Tell me more. The other piece of that is that, sometimes when a teen says something that we, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine. There's also a lot of and I sort of another piece of that can be these extremes, right? I don't have any more friends. I haven't seen anybody in so long. Nobody's going to want to talk to me. I'm going to have nothing to do, right? These always or never sort of things. And those can be really hard as parents to sort of figure out, where's our entry point here? Whoa, that was huge. These are such extremes. There's sort of no place in. What I often encourage parents to do, and what I see parents do that's really successful, is trying to reframe that or sort of give some reflection there. So, with the student, I have no more friends. I haven't talked to anybody. I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything. Nobody's going to want to be around me anymore. Saying something like, it's been a long time since you've done the things that have felt fun and typical and normal for you, right? Something about just sort of reframing what they're saying can open up a conversation, and it can help them feel felt. That's one of my favorite phrases from a psychologist, Dan Siegel. And I know exactly what that means, right? When somebody says something to you, when you feel felt, there's something that can just help your shoulders sink a little bit, and you can sort of get into that a little bit more, which is what we want. We want to have that conversation with our teen. The other piece, sort of that goes along with that, don't worry about it sort of, piece is try really hard not to fall into the trap of making stressors go away, right? We all know what it's like when we can see that our kid has so much on their plate, and we know how to just sort of say, don't worry about any of it. Don't do any of it. It's too hard. Right? Avoidance is a strategy, right? Avoidance is a strategy to help tolerate distress. However, it's not a long-term solution. So when we, again, sort of inadvertently sometimes may reinforce that avoidance, what we might be doing is sort of unconsciously letting our kids or sort of reinforcing for them that maybe they don't have the skills to do something that we believe in them that they can do. So where this may come in is particularly around schoolwork, when a project feels too hard, maybe they've waited until the last minute to start to tackle it. And then it feels like it's never going to be possible. Don't worry about it. We'll just email your teacher and say you couldn't do it, or something along those lines, versus trying to encourage kids to take manageable bites out of it, to sort of acknowledge where they're at. This stinks. This is not where you wanted to be. This is important to you. And it was so hard that we couldn't even face it. And now here we are, and this sucks. And as Ms. Zephyr was saying, our teachers are so interested in supporting kids in taking those manageable bites, and getting something done for the opportunity to learn and to build those skills. And that's what we want to see students be able to do. It may not be about the full completed end project every single time. It may be more about the fact that you worked hard enough not to avoid something that in the past you may have done because it was so difficult. So as parents, I think we don't want to see our kids struggle. We don't want to see them have to deal with things that are painful. And helping them struggle is helping them build those muscles, and is helping them understand this is something hard. I can do hard things. And again, as Ms. Zephyr and Ms. Balzano shared, reaching out to their counselor, reaching out to their teacher to say something like, I don't even know how to take the first step. I don't even know what to do. We're really good at helping students figure out that piece. And I know that you are too as parents. So we all have that urge at times to sort of collude with the avoidance. And so what I would encourage us all to do is to notice those things and try really hard to help them struggle through it, which right now during a pandemic is even more difficult because we know all of the other things that our students are struggling with. They're not seeing their friends. They're not doing the typical things that they're used to doing. And so one more thing feels like oftentimes too much. And the more we help them sort of work through those things and not rely on avoidance, the more they're going to be able to tackle those hard things that I know that we all know that we want to help them do. And the last thing I would say, right, is we've got to take care of ourselves. And this isn't, I know that I feel like self-care. Every time I say it, people roll their eyes now, right? I'm not, what that means for you is totally individual to you. For one person, it may be taking a walk every day. For one person, it may be, journaling. There's such a host of things to do around our health, around our wellness, around our ability to stay connected with the people and the things that matter to us. And again, it goes back to that cliche on the airplane where we put our oxygen mask on first so that we can be there for the others in our lives who count on us. And the last thing I just want to say is that if and when you notice or have serious concerns or worries, I just want to sort of highlight again what Ms. Zephyr was talking about. I would really encourage you not to be afraid to bring things up. If you're noticing that your child is isolating more, if you're noticing things that are really impacting their functioning in ways that are concerning to you, don't be afraid to speak up to them. You're not going to put any ideas in their head that aren't already there. I have a lot of parents who worry, I'm not going to ask them if they're engaging in self-harm because maybe they don't know about self-harm and maybe now I'm the one who's encouraging them to do it. That's not what the research tells us. The research tells us that when we can say things out loud, it oftentimes takes that first step of taking the weight off the kid's shoulder. I have been thinking about this and I haven't felt safe or comfortable saying it out loud because I'm afraid of what you're going to think of me. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. Even if we are providing the most loving, supportive environment that promotes communication, kids are often going to feel those ways. So don't be afraid to say out loud the things that are in your gut. That's what we have as parents, that gut feeling. And your student, I think very often needs you to speak up about those things. And then, as Ms. Zephyr said, reach out to one of us so we can partner with you to sort of help you through those next steps, whether it's assessment or and helping you connect to some resources. I think I'll stop there and see if would this be a good time for questions, Ms. Zephyr, or what makes sense sort of at this point?
Yes, I think at this point we were going to move into questions that the viewers, parents, and guardians might have at this point. So you're welcome to put them in a chat. We do have our super fantastic Ella Stalker in the background. She was our librarian, and now she's sort of half part librarian and part technical genius for our school. So if she gets and sees questions, she's going to post them. And while we're waiting for that, I just want to say, Karen, as soon as you said the wins, to think about wins with your kids, like that little piece was so helpful. Like just, I paused and thought of it. I was like, you know, as I mentioned, I have 3 teenagers at home. So to pause and think of like those little wins, like not only is helpful for me, but, you know, it can be helpful then when we go back and interact with our kids and sort of, you know, just acknowledging the positives from the week.
Great, I'm glad.
Just kind of off topic real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Audience. So we've been surveying folks, as many of you know, to try to find out how many folks are going to come back to the school or remain remote. So if you haven't filled out the survey, we're going to send it out again so you'll have the opportunity to. We had a student forum earlier today. I say we, myself, Ms. Kumaki, and Ms. Camera. We talked to students, answered a lot of great questions about the 4x4 block schedule and the flip time for next year, and also about returning to school this year. So they have a little bit more information as well. So hopefully you can get those filled out. This helps us a lot in our planning to welcome all the students back. Just had to throw that in there real quick. Thanks.
I think as we're thinking about questions, I wanted to just bring one up that a parent brought to me today that we talked about in our family session, and I thought it was really relevant. And the question was really about language, that the student was talking so much about, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, I'm so depressed, like just had a lot of big words about her feelings. And it really overwhelmed mom to say, whoa, I haven't heard you talk like that before. What do I do? Do I call the counselor and get you into therapy right away? And what we talked about was, again, sometimes what kids say can sort of stop us in our tracks, and we can be afraid around how to respond. So the first thing we did was just sort of slow down and say, whoa, you got a lot going on, and just really notice with her how intense this was, and ask a little bit more. And just thinking about sort of the power of words again for teenagers. And so what we did was we just really asked her to sort of tell us what that means. Tell us what that's like. Tell us what anxiety means to you. And then what I encouraged, and what we came up with in this particular situation was this felt like sort of some escalated worry about some particular things that was not really a cause for major concern, but it was an opportunity for mom and daughter to really understand what worry does for this kiddo, and how worry sort of affects her day, how she can sort of sit and stew with it, and then, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock and what have I done? And I've been sitting here staring at something, right? Like worry sort of paralyzes her a little bit. So we talked about things like doing some research together as a family to understand a little bit about what anxiety was. And so we spent some time in our session sort of talking through the stress response in our body, and about how this is our body's alarm system, which is an important thing that we all need. And sometimes that alarm system is it's stuck. It needs some maintenance. or it sort of rings when we're not in a crisis. And so that was sort of some homework that they had for each other and with each other to sort of understand a little bit more about what they were dealing with. And so I would encourage families to sort of, again, take those things as opportunities to ask more questions. Tell me what that means. You may think one thing that language means, and when you ask some more questions, you may learn that it's something very different that your kiddo is sort of referring to. So those can be some opportunities to have some shared understanding of things together.
So there's a question that came in. It would be helpful to know how you are planning to deal with students who have become screen addicted over the last year. Is there any talk about using C-books less once students are back in school?
And there's a follow-up to it in the chat, which is, I ask because I fear that the violent games my child plays are giving him a distorted view of social reality, and that the distorted vision will last once COVID restrictions are lifted.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the use of Chromebooks, I think I would defer that to Mr. Sadiq, only because we've been using Chromebooks for several years at the high school. And I think through the whole district, right? And then maybe we can talk about the second part.
Yeah, so the use of Chromebooks. So for the rest of this school year, we're going to still be relying pretty heavily on Chromebooks because teachers are going to be teaching the students who are in front of them. The teachers who come back will be teaching the students who decide to return in person, but also teaching the students who are still remote. So everybody's going to need to access their Google Classrooms through their Chromebooks. The students who are in person, during the day, they may not have it on for the whole class, but there will be times when they use it. And then once we are back next year fully in person, that's what the plan is, then we'll be using Chromebooks the way we have in the past, which is not throughout every class. And all of the assignments they won't need to necessarily access them through their Chromebooks. So there'll be less use next year, but we're still going to be using them. Especially at this point, there's no way to really completely get away from the technology, unfortunately, but we do want to try to minimize it next year when we're in person. The other part of the question?
Ella, is it possible to share that second part of that question again? Thank you.
So I'm happy to not completely answer it, but to empathize as a senior who is video game obsessed, right? Especially in the real heart of lockdown when sports were lost and he couldn't do that stuff. I think that that's a valid concern, and I think video games have been a valid concern for years prior to COVID, right? Especially violent video games. But your piece about a distorted view of social reality, I think I would take Karen's advice, and that's the one thing that I think it may have been Karen years ago when I complained about a video game being played, who said, you need to remind him that video games are not like real life, right? Like, what's the fate? Like, what is a video game? And it's a video game behind a screen for a reason. So we have a lot of conversations about that in terms of social reality. But if you're talking in terms of that's the only way for him to communicate with people, especially with the online gaming, I think that my suggestion would be to have a really candid conversation with your child about what it means to have that social interaction strictly behind a screen, and even more so on a video game, they're doing it either with a headset on or they're typing into a computer. And I think that that's a conversation to have, and there is going to be some transition back, right? So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that in some ways the use of screen at the school, we can control at the school that they're not playing those video games during the school days. So we can remind them there is good screen time and there is, bad, the video games are not bad, but there is different ways to use your screen time. And I think unfortunately limiting screen time. And I know that's a really hard thing to do. And it goes back to what Karen was talking about, which was those conversations. I'll speak just for my own house. We used to have a no video games during the week rule, right, during school. And then quarantine happened and I was like, I don't know what else for you to do, so go play video games because I really don't have anything for you to do. So then I had to, when school started again this year, we had to have a bit of a conversation of, okay, so you're right, you're still home and you're still behind a screen and you still can't go out, but should we really be up till 2 a.m. playing video games? Probably not. So let's have that A and B conversation and reach that compromise of here's the limit I'm setting and what can we agree to? So I think that that's probably my best advice, but that's more as a parent than a counselor. So
Yeah, and I would add, I realize that every student is really different, and so they'll take to this differently. But looking for more opportunities to get students involved, which is harder now because of COVID. But as the world sort of reopens again, whether it be through sports and art class, even a club. I know we have a gaming club at the school. Like every opportunity to be away from the electronic, to be outside, to have more of those real world interactions. Maybe if your child's old enough to get a job, any opportunities to pull them away from the screen and have those real world opportunities will help them with that current distorted view. It's a real concern. I hear that. So if we don't have any more questions, I just want to thank the people for coming and for joining us tonight. And as we have said from the beginning, we fully want to partner with you. One of the things that I value the most about Amherst Regional High School and all the many years that I've worked there is the highly committed staff who are very student focused and family focused. The willingness of people to be flexible, accommodating, and supportive. So if you do have concerns and you feel like the school has no idea what your child is struggling with, and you feel like it's important they know, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, and before we go, if I could just say one other thing. Oh, is that am I
We can
like,
hear you.
is that okay? Okay, I feel like I have some feedback. Sorry about that. What's that?
I think we all might need to mute.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I would just, in the spirit of, we talked about sort of a parenting win at the beginning. I would say as we close, one of the things I ask everybody to think about is what is something over the next few days that you can that you can do for you to take care of you, to be as grounded as you want to be, or as aware, or as energized, even if that's 2% more. And then I would also encourage you to think about what is something big or small I can let go of in the next day or two. And then what is something I can do that a way that I can validate what I notice about my child's efforts or energy or accomplishments. What is something that I can really notice and say out loud to them that I see, so that I can help them feel felt. And then the last one would be, what is something that maybe you may have been avoiding talking about or bringing up, that you could try to talk about with your teen. You don't have to do all 4. Those are just some ideas of things to some homework for us as parents to think about. But
a little bit more homework if you're interested in hearing some of the great questions that many of your students, other students asked today about the return to school and the 4x4 schedule. You can access that. It was recorded, and you can access it through the ARPS YouTube channel. May starts with the conversations with your students. Some of them are a little bit nervous about coming back and excited. So it's all. And again, if there's more information that comes from those conversations, please let us know. We want to continue to work with you and support their transition back to school in any way we can. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end our broadcast now, but feel free to get in touch with any of the folks on this session and follow up with any follow-up questions we didn't have a chance to get to or that you think of later. I know sometimes after these live sessions end, people go, oh, I should have asked that question. So all of us are available by email. Have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.